For a decade, a part of you fell silent, not because it perished, but because no one ever showed you how to tune into it. That is what this truly comes down to. It isn't about luck or perfect timing. It is a force that has been resting within you, as steady as a pilot light, just waiting for the exact moment you'd finally turn the ignition once more. And that moment isn't in the future. That moment is right now. You weren't chosen from the masses because you made the most noise. You were chosen because throughout the journey, you continuously showed up, even when there was zero applause. Just feel that sensation in your chest for a moment, that heavy tightness. It isn't nervousness. It isn't anxiety. It is pure recognition. Your physical body understands a truth that your conscious mind is still processing. I need you to reflect on the version of yourself from a decade back, not the polished, filtered version, the authentic one, the one who possessed a vision, a spark, a passion they used to speak about with absolute fire in their eyes, long before life became chaotic, noisy, and overwhelming. Somewhere in the gap between that time and today, that spark never actually vanished. It merely retreated beneath the surface. You understand that sensation of walking past a specific room in your own home that you no longer enter. Not because the door is locked, but simply because you grew accustomed to ignoring it. That is exactly what occurred with that piece of your soul. It remains completely intact inside. Not a single piece of it is broken. It has merely been resting in the shadows, waiting for your return. You've sensed it, haven't you? Yes. Don't act like you haven't. That restless urge at 2 a.m. when your brain refuses to power down and you begin dwelling on the true purpose you were meant to fulfill. That magnetic tug you experience when you witness someone else living boldly and a knot forms in your gut. It isn't envy. It is recognition. That is the echo of your own potential knocking from within. You've been brushing it off as a passing phase, or exhaustion, or just being overworked. But what if it isn't? What if it has nothing to do with stress? What if it is a profound strength inside you demanding to be noticed? Because it has remained dormant for way too long, and it is entirely finished being polite. Here is the secret no one ever mentions. Silence does not equal absence. Deep underground, it appears as though absolutely nothing is occurring. Zero motion, zero noise, no visible proof of progress. Yet beneath that soil, a shell is cracking open, stretching outward, laboring in the darkness long before it ever pierces the daylight. You are not lagging behind. You are not delayed. You are a seed that has been executing silent, invisible labor for an entire decade. And what currently feels like utter stagnation is actually the universe preparing for everything to unfold simultaneously. I realize it feels as though you've been screaming into an abyss for 10 years. However, that silence was never hollow. It was a vital rehearsal. Every single day you felt ignored was a day you spent mastering the unique cadence of your own heartbeat. Let us dive even deeper into this, because what you have endured is more than just a buried seed. It is the ultimate metaphor. Imagine this scenario. Your inner strength is like a subterranean river flowing beneath the foundation of a home you have, resided in for a solid decade. You paced across those floorboards daily, enduring the dry spells, noticing the withered patches in the yard, and questioning why your environment felt so barren. You purchased all the superficial remedies, the quick-fix fertilizers, attempting to resurrect a patch of earth that felt doomed. You completely missed the fact that merely inches beneath your feet, a colossal, ancient aquifer of pristine water was lying in wait. It hadn't vanished. It was simply building immense pressure. Now, the tectonic plates have moved. The initial fracture has formed in the dirt, and that current is preparing to erupt through the topsoil. This is no minor leak. It is a geyser capable of turning your entire wasteland lush and green in a matter of hours. That fracture is your formal invitation. The earth is trembling right now, not to destroy you, but to liberate whatever has been trapped inside your core. I need you to deeply absorb this reality, because I understand exactly how grueling the past 10 years might have appeared for you. Perhaps it was a version of yourself that clocked in to work faithfully every day, drained your energy completely, yet returned home feeling utterly disconnected and alien to your own identity. Perhaps it involved raising a family, nursing an aging parent, or simply enduring one brutal year followed by another. And somewhere amidst all that sheer survival, you silently entombed the aspects of your soul that used to vocalize big dreams. Maybe you took a massive risk once, gave it your all, and failed? And rather than attempting a second time, you concluded it was far less painful to cease hoping, to stop desiring success with such intensity. I completely grasp that. Craving a goal and falling short is one of the most isolating emotions in human existence. But hear my words. The fact that it collapsed back then does not invalidate the dream itself. You have been shrinking your ambitions because you falsely assumed the doorway was deadbolted. The reality, however, is that you possessed the master key all along. It simply means the temporal alignment was off, and that alignment has officially shifted. Visualize this concept alongside me for a brief moment, because I need you to mentally picture it, not merely listen to it. Somewhere in this very instant, there exists a parallel version of your existence that has remained sealed away, much like an abandoned residence where no one has resided for quite some time. The furnishings remain intact. The walls are still sturdy and upright. A layer of dust has coated the surfaces, naturally. Yet absolutely nothing is destroyed. The only requirement is for someone to confidently stride right back through the main entrance, throw the windows wide open, and allow the fresh breeze to circulate once more. That abandoned home represents you, and you are currently standing on the front steps, closer to the threshold than you have been in a decade. And a deep instinct within you is already fully aware of this. Let me share a brief story about a boat. Not a massive vessel, a weathered aluminum rowboat, the exact type a person purchases used and never takes the time to restore. It sits beside a quiet lake, overturned on the muddy bank, because that is the proper method for storing a small craft like that. Flipped completely over so rainwater won't accumulate and cause internal decay. And on every single occasion, right before you wanted to utilize that skiff, before you could actively launch it into the current and navigate forward, you were required to heave it right side up. And hidden beneath that hull, without fail, there was always something lurking. Occasionally, it was nothing more severe than a frightened toad. Other times, it was something far larger, a creature that caused you to instinctively leap backward before your eyes could even identify the threat. No human ever offered those animals an invitation to dwell beneath the metal. They required no formal welcome. The sheer darkness, the moisture, the isolation. That environment was inviting enough. Any object that remains inverted, stagnant, and neglected for an extended period transforms into the perfect sanctuary for unwanted things to nest and settle in permanently. Whether or not that analogy lands perfectly, I need to emphasize this point. Self-doubt operates in the exact same manner. Paralyzing fear functions the exact same way. A decade of whispering to yourself, "Not quite yet. I'm not worthy. Perhaps next season." That mindset is the overturned boat. And the method for flipping it upright does not involve passively waiting for your anxieties to pack up and vanish voluntarily. It requires grabbing the edge, heaving it over yourself, stepping back momentarily while whatever dark things have been festering underneath scatter into the daylight, and then bravely stepping inside to row forward regardless. Because here is the undeniable truth regarding inner tension, genuine tension, the pressure that swells in your ribcage right before a massive breakthrough does not indicate that something is inherently broken within you. It signifies that the pressure is executing its intended purpose. Consider the way a human hand tightly grips an object just before launching it forward. Reflect on the sensation of holding a deep breath in your lungs right before you aggressively exhale. That exact physical tightness you have been dragging around, that relentless agitation that refuses to allow you a moment of peace. It is not an alarm bell signaling danger. It is kinetic buildup. It represents 10 full years of immense preparation with zero outlet. And it absolutely must release somewhere. And it has actively selected this present moment. Do you want to hear a crazy truth? The individuals who appear destined for greatness, the ones who seem to possess an unfair, hidden edge, the vast majority of them spent decades appearing exactly as you do today. Insecure and entirely silent outwardly, while a deafening revolution was occurring internally. Society never applauds the grueling years that precede the celebrated victories. No camera crew documents the tired individual sitting in absolute isolation at a dimly lit dining table near midnight, agonizing over whether their entire existence is a failure. Yet that specific struggle is precisely what forges the necessary emotional armor. That is the crucial phase that creates the massive divide between an individual who was merely gifted a title and someone who fiercely earned the right to maintain it. Therefore, allow this reality to fully digest. You were never enduring a punishment during the quietness of the previous decade. You were undergoing intense preparation. Your last 10 years did not constitute a jail term. They served as a rigorous boot camp for the phenomenal breakthrough you are about to shoulder. Every single frustrated tear that felt entirely pointless was a phase where your core was evolving, becoming profoundly stronger, more centered, intensely grounded, and far more equipped to sustain the gravity of what is approaching. You cannot manufacture that level of fortitude in a fleeting instant of pure motivation. You forge that resilience during the monotonous years, the completely unglamorous periods, the seasons where you continued to grind even when the effort felt utterly futile. Those chapters were absolutely not squandered. They provided the essential conditioning you were entirely unaware you were undergoing. Now, this is the exact point where we dive further, because my goal isn't to simply boost your mood for 5 or 10 brief minutes and then toss you right back into the identical routine with the identical internal void. I intend to create a permanent, fundamental shift within your psyche. Therefore, we must discuss the vast gap between possessing immense capability and actually recognizing you possess it, because those are two drastically distinct realities, and the majority of humanity wastes their entire lifespan holding the former without ever grasping the latter. You could own every culinary instrument necessary, resting quietly inside a kitchen cabinet, and still starve to death if you refuse to pull the handle. That scenario doesn't indicate a shortage of tools. That represents a critical failure of awareness. And that profound self-awareness is the single asset no external force can simply gift to you. You are required to stretch out and claim it manually. Let me share an anecdote regarding a child who was anticipating the loss of their primary tooth, wiggling it relentlessly for a week straight. They were desperate for it to detach because adults had promised that upon its removal, a wonderful reward would manifest late in the evening while they slumbered. The child carefully tucked the small tooth beneath their cushion, aggressively battled their own exhaustion, and obsessively checked beneath the fabric repeatedly, convinced that a magical event would occur in plain sight if they just maintained a fierce enough gaze. Ultimately, exhaustion conquered them naturally. Yet at dawn, that same child came sprinting down the hallway. Their small fingers tightly gripped a shiny prize, totally convinced that the universe had just materialized something profoundly mystical out of thin air. However, here is the factual reality regarding the origin of that reward. It was not conjured out of empty space. It had been resting inside a hidden cabinet within that exact residence the whole duration, stashed away, secured, and technically already their property long before they possessed the knowledge to request it. The true enchantment wasn't the spontaneous creation of a new object. The real magic was that an item already assigned to them was finally transferred into their physical grasp. That exact dynamic is currently unfolding in your personal journey. You are not waiting for a miracle to be spun from absolute nothingness. You are simply waiting for an inheritance that rightfully belongs to you to be firmly pressed back into your palms. Your internal dominance was never erased. It has been secured in the vault this entire time. And the previous 10 years were never about attempting to earn it. They were entirely focused on evolving into an individual capable of confidently pulling that handle open, rather than remaining terrified of the immense capability hidden within. You've been scanning the horizon for a cosmic signal. Well, I am standing right here to officially declare that your holding period has reached its expiration date. Unclench your fists and accept the greatness that has always belonged to you. I realize several of you are currently listening and arguing, but I attempted this previously, and I failed completely. Therefore, I must not be destined for this level of success. I need you to mentally crush that specific narrative immediately, because it is pure deception masquerading as fake modesty. You are absolutely not permanently banned from success just because your initial trial ended in collapse. Absolutely zero achievements of genuine significance were ever constructed on the very first try. The individuals who appear divinely selected to the public eye are typically just the relentless ones who adamantly refuse to allow a single locked entrance to persuade them that the entire hallway was barred. And if you are brutally honest in your own mind, a tiny, resilient fragment of your soul has never truly surrendered to that failure. That is the exact fragment I am addressing in this moment, that unrelenting inner whisper, the piece of you that retreated into silence, but never truly vanished. Society commanded you to lower your voice, while your Creator softly instructed you to remain patient. There is a monumental distinction there. One represents a permanent red light. The other is the crucial inhale before a massive sprint. Let us push further, because my goal isn't to inject a fleeting surge of motivation that evaporates by the following day. I intend to anchor something permanent within you. So, evaluate the concept of pressure once more. Authentic, heavy pressure. The specific force that actively molds a substance rather than merely pulverizing it. Absolutely nothing of supreme worth is generated devoid of friction. Raw carbon does not transform into a breathtaking gem without immense duration and crushing gravity bearing down continuously to form a diamond. Exactly. Physical muscle cannot expand unless it violently clashes against heavy resistance initially. Every agonizing calendar year you have survived. The seasons that appeared incredibly unjust. The phases that felt like a deliberate penalty from the universe. The moments where you broke down, sobbing inside your vehicle in an empty lot, simply because it offered the only privacy available. Yes, those painful tears. Those exact years were pure pressure, not a divine punishment. Heavy pressure. And when that force is applied over an adequate timeline, it refuses to destroy the object beneath it. It fundamentally evolves it. It is completely fine. It is perfectly acceptable to feel terrified regarding the sheer scale of this calling. Even the vast sea started as a single droplet. Your anxiety does not indicate that you lack courage. It serves as proof that you fully comprehend the massive gravity of the arena you are entering. Therefore, when I declare that your defining moment has arrived, I am not implying that a random cosmic lever was pulled without logic. I am stating that you have ultimately, silently, and without any public applause, morphed into the precise iteration of yourself capable of lifting the burden that has been anticipating your arrival for a full decade. 10 seasons ago, you lacked the capacity. Even 5 years prior, you remained unequipped. However, a profound shift occurred internally throughout the journey. Every brutal confrontation you navigated, every shattering letdown that you refused to let break you, every single dawn you forced yourself out of bed regardless, all of that friction was actively forging a warrior durable enough to finally bear this weight. The individual you embody right now, the exact person absorbing these sentences, not your past self, but your current self. You did not endure that 10-year gauntlet merely to remain stagnant. You survived specifically so you could take charge. You fought through the darkness to eventually escort others out of the exact same shadows you just escaped. I strongly need you to observe a critical truth regarding silence, because we have been framing it as the ultimate villain throughout this conversation. And it absolutely isn't. Absolute silence is exactly what a telephone looks like on the desk, mere milliseconds before it rings with the exact news that alters your entire trajectory. Silence is the dark, empty stage in the fleeting moments before the spotlights blaze to life. Quietness is not a void. Silence is intense anticipation hiding behind a subtle mask. The entire decade you squandered feeling as though your life was stalled was, in reality, the complete opposite of stagnation. It was the grueling, unseen labor of transforming into a person qualified to manage the incoming blessing. You cannot skip straight to the triumphant conclusion without enduring the silent, frustrating chapters in the middle. Every narrative worth repeating contains that phase. Here is a vital realization I need you to firmly digest, because it will entirely rewire how you interpret your current situation. That heavy obligation pushing down on your shoulders today, that daunting responsibility, that ambition that appears terrifyingly massive, that specific leadership position you have been assigned which makes you feel utterly unqualified, that is not a random curse dumped on you by mistake. That is the literal manifestation of that locked cabinet finally being wrenched open. You are never assigned a challenge of that magnitude unless your core spirit already inherently understands how to balance it. Even if your conscious mind is still sprinting to catch up with that deep wisdom. The sheer scale of the obstacle facing you is not evidence of your inadequacy. It is absolute proof of the immense power that has already been deposited within your soul, actively waiting for this exact crisis to deploy. You are not losing the race of life. You were simply an active construction zone, and the external scaffolding is finally being dismantled. The architecture is finished, and the public is about to witness the masterpiece you have morphed into. And I need to state this with absolute clarity because it is crucial. You do not require a single drop more than you currently possess. You do not need a flawless, upgraded version of your personality to arrive before you take action. You must stop delaying until you acquire a larger budget, a wider schedule, maximum confidence, endless patience, or external validation. The raw materials currently inside you, regardless of how insignificant they might appear in this moment, as unpolished as they may seem, they are more than sufficient. The very instant those tools are utilized correctly and granted permission to operate rather than remaining concealed, everything changes. Modest assets expand exponentially the moment they stop being locked away out of terror and are bravely put to work, even if your hands are trembling in the process. This is the critical junction where the two metaphors we have been dragging along finally collide. That overturned skiff that has been harboring dark, hidden fears underneath its hull, that gets forcefully flipped upright today. And that dusty drawer that has been securing a masterpiece you repeatedly convinced yourself wasn't worthy of display, that gets forcefully yanked open today. A decade of radio silence was never a punishment. It was a divine setup. Every single muted year, every invisible sacrifice, every single instance where you stood on the edge of quitting but held the line, all of that friction was accumulating toward a single objective. A dawn where the stagnant energy inside you is finally permitted to rise, and that dawn is no longer orbiting somewhere in your distant future. It is not scheduled for next season or after you pass, the upcoming benchmark, or whenever the chaos finally settles down. It is the exact 24 hours you are breathing through right now, irrespective of whether you feel perfectly prepared or entirely panicked. If you are absorbing this message at this exact second, it is not a random algorithm. It is the universe's direct reply to the quiet plea you abandoned several years back. The cosmos never once stopped paying attention. Therefore, here is the concrete action you must take next, because feeling temporarily inspired for a few minutes and then shutting off a screen to revert to your old habits would be an absolute catastrophe. Cease your waiting for external validation. That was never a document anyone else had the authority to sign. You already hold the clearance. You have possessed it from day one. The version of your spirit that has been quietly observing for 10 years does not require an additional 12 months of training. That core identity has been fully equipped, truly prepared, for far longer than your ego is comfortable admitting. What that spirit requires now is a single, bold choice, not a perfectly mapped out blueprint without flaws. Just one authentic commitment to stop allowing that boat to rot upside down in the mud, to cease keeping those valuable cabinets padlocked, and to stop handling your own potential as if it requires a stranger's key to activate. Quit searching for a green light to step into your dominance. Destiny has already authorized the transition. The ink is completely dry on the contract. The only remaining task is for you to boldly claim the position you were permanently designed to occupy. You are not running late on the clock. You were never being ignored by fate. You were simply being forged in absolute privacy, operating on a schedule that was entirely independent of society's demands on your life. And every brutal challenge you have conquered until today, every muted, tedious, seemingly pointless year was never evidence of failure. It was undeniable proof that a force within you was continuously evolving, hardening into the precise weapon required for this very second. That inner flame never actually extinguished. It merely retreated deep into the coals where no external force could rob its temperature. It simmered quietly to defend itself against the bitter storms of reality. And today, it is exploding back into a massive blaze. Therefore, accept this encounter for its true nature, not a glitch, not a random piece of media that accidentally crossed your feed. View it as a beacon, if you prefer that term, but ultimately, it is simply a reflection projecting your true identity back at you, presenting you exactly as you were always intended to exist. The 10-year drought of silence has concluded, not simply because the clock expired, but because you successfully completed the grueling, hidden labor necessary to bear the weight. You did the heavy lifting. Exactly. Pull in a massive breath and allow that reality to anchor deep in your chest. You are standing in the precise coordinates required to inherit everything you ever desired. Rise to your feet. Truly stand up. Yank that cabinet open. Heave that heavy boat upright. March straight back through the entrance of that abandoned home that has been patiently holding out for your return.